All right. So the interesting thing about Alaska is a little bit different than most states. It is one of the handful of states that actually has multi-partisan or bipartisan coalition building, and that is good and bad, right? So basically a coalition is, the definition is an alliance for combined action, especially a temporary alliance of political parties forming a government or states. Actually, it's a bunch of people that get together that are like-minded. And it doesn't have to be political, right? You can have a coalition. We have a coalition called the Alaska Coalition for Justice. And it meets every Tuesday, and it's organizations and individuals that have a certain mindset about what policing should look like in Alaska, right? And we try to push an agenda to make our laws match what we believe policing should look like in Alaska. That's a coalition. They've done the same thing in the state legislature, but unlike most state legislatures, it's multi-partisan, which is good and bad. Can you think of why it would be good that it's multi-partisan? Some of the things that could happen because you have a multi-partisan coalition?
You can have disagreements that don't break down the whole alliance.
That don't break down the whole system? So he said you can have disagreements that don't break down the whole system. What about you?
Have minority members that join the majority caucus, and sometimes that can backfire, and then they can get voted out like the parliament.
That sounds like a downside.
Well, it's a downside in the long run, but he was able to make effective change because he was essentially a minority, and he joined the majority caucus.
Could I hear what you're talking about?
Well, so if somebody's in the minority and then they join into the majority.
It sounds like you're talking about a particular person.
Oh, McCormick. He was a representative and he was voted out last term. I don't know what he voted on, but his people didn't like it because he was voted with the majority and that wasn't kind of what they were going for. He was at my district.
Did you have something?
An advantage could be that it's a better cross-section of the people of the state, and they get better representation and differing viewpoints.
Totally agree with that. What are some downsides? Anybody?
I guess the downside would be, who do you allow on your coalition? That would be a big thing, I think, particularly here in Anchorage, that I see as an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Totally understand. And so one of the downsides that I can think of specifically for the legislature is when you create a coalition, you only move at the pace of your slowest member, right? Like if you have somebody that you've come to a decision for the most part, right? But you have a couple of people that are moving slower or aren't willing to make that decision or aren't willing to make that determination, it can slow the whole process down. So the more people that you have at any table, the slower the process generally is going to be. So if you're trying to do rapid response or you're trying to actually make change in a quick way, sometimes coalition building can be difficult. But I think that what Anthony said is really, really important, and is that you do get different perspectives, right? You do bring different voices to the table.
And you also, if you've got a coalition of people who are different, then there's no fight about it afterwards. The fight is out because everybody who is different has just made that decision and they represent the people who are different, and so then there's less fight.
Hopefully.
Mm-hmm. That's someone right behind you. Thank you.
What I was going to say is in a coalition with people of different viewpoints, you're going to get expression of those viewpoints and discussion about why they believe as they do, and might open somebody's mind occasionally.
That's huge, right? Opening people's mind. I totally agree with that. And getting different perspectives, you usually get a better solution if you consider different perspectives. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, we have the picture up there of the Bush caucus, and what's really interesting about this situation, so this is the last legislature that was sworn in, and that's from left to right, it's Neil Foster, and he represents Nome. C.J. McCormick is the Bethel region. Bryce Edgman represents southwest Alaska, and then Pocketok is he's the North Slope representative. So this was the last time. Pocketok resigned to become the mayor, and then let me back up. So this caucus here, this is the Bush caucus, and they traditionally will join. These are the rural Alaskan representatives, and they'll join the majority. Typically, they'll join the majority that they think is going to best serve their constituents. And in this case, they joined the Republicans, which is very interesting because all four of those men there are more on, well, maybe not so much Pocketok, but they're more on the progressive side of the aisle. And this gentleman here was mentioning McCormick, or I'm sorry, you were mentioning McCormick, and McCormick, I don't know him as well, but he's pretty progressive. He ended up getting voted out because he joined the Republican majority, and I think, and they're pretty much led by Representative Edgman, who is now the current speaker. So this was the last session. Now the current session is Foster, and then Nellie Jimmy replaced. She beat McCormick in the last election. Edgman is back, and then Pocketok is interesting because when he resigned, he was an independent, and the Governor Dunleavy, who's a conservative, since Pocketok's an independent, Governor Dunleavy, he appointed a Republican to replace him. And that's one of the laws in Alaska, is that the governor, if somebody resigns from the legislature and they're an independent, they don't have a party affiliation, the governor can choose whoever they want.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and
That's
so Governor Dunleavy chose a Republican.
Of course he did.
And then that Republican was not popular, so he got voted out, and so now Robin Burke is that representative. And so now the Bush caucus, they joined a progressive majority. The majority of the majority are Democrats, and they voted Edgman speaker. So Edgman is the current speaker of the House.
It's interesting how that works, right?
Yeah, it's really
and why was the Bush caucus originally formed, though? Why would you think that coalition would be formed? Here.
Well,
sorry.
They like I said, rural Alaskans have the constituents of rural Alaska have very similar interests, right? And
But their interests vary greatly from Anchorage, right?
Well, for the most part, yeah.
Who do you think gets the most representation within the legislature? Who gets the most attention?
Well, sure. It's the Anchorage and Fairbanks, the urban areas.
So the Bush caucus was formed so that their issues would rise to not the forefront necessarily, but so that they could bring their issues. They have more power as a coalition. We have more power as a group. We have more power as a movement, right? And so that's why coalitions are so powerful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and this coalition is very powerful in Alaska.
Yeah.
And for the last two legislatures, they have formed the majority. They were key in forming the majority.
Yeah. They have a little bit of swag, right?